So we are heading into Remembrance Day, and if the young people in your house have questions about what it is and why it's important, sometimes the best way to answer that is with a book. So this morning, we are looking at children's books that address the topic in age-appropriate ways, of course. Vicki Vansickle is here in studio with us with some of her picks to get that conversation started. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So let's start with our youngest readers and some picture books. And I love that this first one really explains where the poppy comes from.
Exactly. So A Poppy is to Remember is a really simple story about why we wear poppies. The language is very gentle. There is a note at the back if you want to go into more information about Remembrance Day in Canada specifically. It also includes the text of the poem in Flanders Fields, because for most kids, sort of seeing poppies is where they first start to wonder about Remembrance Day or what does this mean. And I just think this is a great introduction.
Next up you have for the young readers?
This one here is Sergeant Billy. Animal stories are also another way to sort of bring kids into understanding the war. Warhorse, of course, is very famous, but this is the true story of a Canadian billy goat that is adopted by a platoon and goes overseas into the war. It's very funny, it's very light, but it also shows what it was like to actually be in the trenches, but again, in a very age-appropriate way. Again, there's a note at the back. Most of these books have historical notes at the back to sort of show where the truth of it is, but this is also a gentle way for younger kids.
I love that too, bringing the goat in as well.
Yes.
The third one for the young readers.
So The Brass Charm, this is a really delicate, beautifully told story about a girl who discovers that her grandmother, her Oma, was in a concentration camp. This is the author's actual story. Her mother was in a prison camp, and it's a really delicate way to introduce the idea of the Holocaust without traumatizing, which is very challenging. And again, the fact that it's a true story, I think, will very much resonate with kids.
Absolutely. Okay, so moving on to the middle grades, what would you recommend?
So the first one is The Prisoner and the Writer. This is not specifically a war book, but it is about the Dreyfus Affair, in which a Jewish army captain was accused of treason, and a writer thought, you know what, I think this is actually about anti-Semitism. And it very much talks about the context of racism in Europe, which then leads to the war. And then next, I think we can't forget sort of what happened in Canada. So Stealing Home is a graphic novel about what happened with the Japanese internment in Canada. It's about a boy whose family is displaced. They are forced to move to a camp. And he also has a love of baseball and sort of the family feeling and this love of baseball and how people survived in Canada in these internment camps, I think is something else we need to remember. Traitors Among Us, this is by Marcia Skripek. She writes a lot about the war. She's a true expert for kids. This is about two girls from the Ukraine, and it actually happens post-war. So I think some of the things with the war is we think peace is here, everything goes back to normal, and in fact, the echoes we know last forever. So these girls
what a great line.
It is
the
a
echoes
great.
We know last
Well, they
forever.
do, and I think even today we deal with some echoes of that. And so they are now, they've been accused of collaborating with the Nazis by the Soviets. So it also gives some context to what's happening in Russia with Ukraine right now. But again, for the right age group, perfect. Hidden on the High Wire, Kathy Kaser is another great author who writes about the Holocaust. And this is about the true story of the Lorch family circus. It's a German Jewish circus. And they are forbidden by the Nazis to go on. And so the youngest daughter and her mother hide in plain sight. So another circus takes them in.
Oh, wow.
They have new names, and she's literally performing on the High Wire. And it's about how the circus comes together. So this is about the resistance. And again, true story. Great information at the back if you want to know more.
And then we've got for the teenager
For the
in your
teens,
life.
so this is a collection of 9 stories of women from around the world who helped with resistance in some way. So that's heroine, rescuers, rabbis, and spies. These are people I'd never heard of. I am so glad that I know about them now. I think kids will feel the same. But another fantastic book from Second Story Press. The last 2 are from Second Story Press. They're a feminist Canadian press. They do a lot of great fiction about the Holocaust and Jewish identity. And those are 2 examples of them.
We're so lucky to have you in and to walk us through your selections. As
My
always,
pleasure.
we will have Vicki's selections on our social media. Vicki, great to see you.
Great to see you as well.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.